Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye says Korea-Japan relations will improve if Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe upholds previous landmark apologies in his own statement, marking the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. North Korea's nuclear program is expected to dominate discussions as South Korea's foreign minister departs for Malaysia to attend a series of ASEAN-related meetings to be held in Kuala Lumpur this week. First attempting to secure an elusive climate change legacy, US President Barack Obama introduces a plan to reduce carbon emissions from power plants by almost a third over the next 15 years. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, August 4th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this morning, fresh from her recent summer break, President Park Geun-hye has expressed optimism about improving ties with Japan once Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe clearly upholds Tokyo's past apologies for its colonial-era atrocities. Meeting the leader of Japan's opposition Democratic Party, Katsuya Okada, on Monday, President Park said Seoul and Tokyo have been able to improve ties in the past thanks to Japan's self-reflection in the forms of the 1993 Kono and 1995 Murayama statements. Now, referring to the aging Korean victims of Japan's wartime sex slavery, President Park stressed the urgency of resolving the matter, adding that now may be the final chance. Okada, in response, said he was sorry and shameful as a Japanese politician and that he hoped related negotiations between the two countries will lead to favourable results. Abe will release a statement later this month to mark the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. South Korea's first vice minister says Korea, China and Japan should enhance cooperation if they can agree on history. Speaking at a seminar in Seoul on Monday, Jo Tae-yong pointed out that while the foreign ministers of the three countries agreed in March to properly address history and move forward, cooperation is lacking in regional security and political matters. Senior Japanese politicians have raised their opposition to Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's move to expand the scope and role of the country's military. Former Japanese Prime Minister Tomoichi Murayama has denounced Abe for dragging the Japanese people into wars, saying his self-righteous politics are intolerable. Speaking at a forum on Monday, Murayama said Abe's actions don't match his words to uphold the 1995 Murayama statement, and this has caused mistrust and concern among Japan's neighbours. Now, on the same day, former Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono also criticised Abe, saying that preserving Article 9 of the Constitution, which renounces Japan's right to maintain a military, is the right way of pursuing active pacifism that Abe himself claims to advocate. Now, as anticipation builds as to what Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will say in his 70th anniversary statement, footage has emerged of a Korean man forced to work for the Japanese military during the war. The startling revelations show the sheer scale of Tokyo's sexual enslavement of Korean women. Connie Kim reports.
The Seoul-based Association for the Pacific War Victims released a videotaped interview recorded in the early 1990s with a soldier named Song Bok-sup, who collaborated with the Japanese military during the Pacific War. The association says Song took on the role of a civilian worker in the Japanese military in the early 1940s to avoid forced labor and worked as a prison guard in Indonesia. The release of the interview from the early 1990s comes days before the 22nd anniversary of the Kono Statement, in which Tokyo acknowledged Japan's sexual enslavement of women during World War II. In the interview, Song recalls how Singapore and the Indonesian island of Sumatra were heavily populated by Korean women, that had been trafficked in and forced to serve as Japanese troops. He said the women were paid a pittance for their services. Song said he could not put an exact figure on the number of victims as countless Koreans had been drafted during wartime. In 1992, Song released a list of 61 women who served as Japanese military sex slaves. Historians estimate that more than 200,000 women, mostly Koreans, were forced to serve Japanese troops during Japan's colonial rule of Korea in the early 1900s. As for Song, he was put on trial as a Class B and C war criminal by the combined forces after World War II. However, he was found innocent with the help of an English prisoner he had met during wartime. Song testified that only 2 Koreans, including himself, were found not guilty in the trial in Singapore. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se will depart for Malaysia on this Tuesday to attend a series of ASEAN-related meetings to be held in Kuala Lumpur this week. The meetings scheduled from Wednesday to Thursday include the ASEAN +3 Foreign Ministers meeting and the East Asia Summit. But the attention is centred on the ASEAN Regional Forum. That's because North Korea's Foreign Minister Lee Soo-young will be in attendance along with his counterparts from the stalled 6-party talks aimed at denuclearizing North Korea. During the ARF meeting on Thursday, Yoon and other 6-party member nation representatives, including Washington's John Kerry, Beijing's Wang Yi, Tokyo's Fumio Kishida and Moscow's Sergei Lavrov, are expected to hold talks on ways to handle North Korea's nuclear program. Now, Seoul's foreign ministry says Yoon will urge Pyongyang to engage in nuclear talks while letting the regime know that South Korea is open to inter-Korean dialogue. North Korea is believed to be constructing a camouflage roof for its newly upgraded long-range missile launch pad in a bid to prevent South Korean and US intelligence getting a decent look at it. Seoul's defense ministry admitted on Monday that if North Korea completes the roof, it would make it more difficult for the South Korean military to discern Pyongyang's missile activities. That said, the ministry said South Korea-US joint forces still have the capability to detect unusual activities around the site that would be a lot harder to disguise should the North attempt to test fire a long-range rocket in the coming months. North Korea has finally confirmed South Korea's former First Lady Lee Hee-ho's humanitarian trip to Pyongyang later this week. The Kim Dae-jung Peace Center said North Korea sent a letter of invitation on Monday confirming her visit. The widow of former President Kim Dae-jung and her 19-member delegation will be on Pyongyang from Wednesday through Saturday. Lee's delegation does not include any high-profile politicians or former government officials, and no journalists will be accompanying them. Seoul's Unification Ministry says the government will not ask Lee to deliver any message on inter-Korean relations, as the purpose of her visit is entirely private. Now, we're going to take a closer look at the intensifying feud within one of Korea's largest family-run conglomerates. Lotte Korea chairman Shin Dong-bin is in Seoul to try and normalize an increasingly fraught situation, meeting with his father, Shin Gyok-ho, the founder of Lotte Group. Ji Myung-gil reports.
Shin Dong-bin, the second son of Lotte founder Shin Gyok-ho, arrived on Monday at Seoul's Gimpo International Airport and told reporters his father's recent move to dismiss him from the board of Lotte Holdings was illegitimate.
I think the document signed by my father is invalid in legal terms.
Lotte Holdings is the de facto holding firm of Lotte companies in both Korea and Japan. The younger Shin also apologized for the concern created by the family feud.
It is my role to resolve the crisis and swiftly normalize and improve our companies, following in the footsteps of the general chairman's entrepreneurship.
The 60-year-old CEO then met with his father and his older brother Shin Dong-ju briefly at the Lotte Hotel in Seoul. Engaged in a very public fight with his father and older brother over control of the nation's 5th largest conglomerate, Dong-bin had been in Japan to gather support for a vote at a shareholders' meeting. He reportedly lost his father's confidence after the group lost nearly $900 million from its operations in China and Hong Kong. and is said to have been on the defense recently amid word that his father was passing control of the group onto his older brother. Dong-ju and other family members released a document last Friday showing the founder's support of his oldest son as the heir of the Lotte Empire. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Now, the dramatic wrestle for power between the two sons of the founder of Lotte Group has grabbed headlines around the world in recent days, but this isn't the first chaebol family feud with billions of dollars at stake. For a deeper look at the previous blood battles within Korea's giant business groups, Shin Se-min reports.
A typical family portrait. Who could have imagined that 17 years later, the two brothers would be embroiled in a bitter power struggle? Shin Dong-ju and his younger brother Shin Dong-bin are rushing to secure the upper hand in the second-generation ownership of Lotte that oversees annual revenue worth $68 billion. But struggles for succession within the owner family of a multi-billion-dollar firm is nothing new. There have been many more cases, such as with Hyundai, Samsung, Tusan, and even Kumho Asiana Group, all of which had not gone through a change in ownership since their founding. This tradition of passing down control is designed to keep the wealth and power within the founding family.
The CEO of the firm is not the owner of the company, but rather a member of the shareholders on its board of directors.
Experts add that the outdated corporate governance structure created by past administrations allows families to dominate the entire group with a fraction of shares held through cross-shareholding. All in all, limiting candidates for the new leadership to only the next generation of founding family members is a loss for the firm because it automatically excludes any potential CEOs with greater management skills. With the recent feud within Lotte Group, many are voicing the opinion that the founder families of Korea's leading conglomerates should adopt a similar succession model as their foreign counterparts like Ford in the US and Germany's Miele. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
US President Barack Obama has rolled out his Clean Power Plan, one of the key pillars of his administration's plans to tackle man-made climate change. Under the plan, the United States will reduce carbon pollution from power plants by 32% from 2005 levels by 2030. Speaking at the White House on Monday, Obama said the world may not be able to reverse global warming if aggressive action to stop it is not taken now. He rejected criticism that the plan would cost jobs and squeeze the poor by increasing energy bills. Obama's plan is already facing stiff opposition from lobby groups and the Republicans. Some within the party say it would have devastating consequences for the US economy. Now to some concerning environmental news that seems quite timely given President Obama's plans. And researchers have shown that the world's glaciers are melting faster than they have in the last 120 years. A study published in the Journal of Glaciology also shows the melt-off has been accelerating in the first decade of the 21st century. On average, glaciers currently lose between 50 to 150 centimeters of thickness every year, 2 to 3 times more than the corresponding average of the 20th century. The latest news on ice melt continues a trend of worrying statistics about the environment. The Earth saw its warmest year ever in 2014, and scientists observed the lowest maximum ice extent ever seen earlier this year. Now, summer has reached its peak here in Korea with heatwave advisories issued throughout most of the nation. Scorching and extremely humid conditions have gotten to the point of being unbearable and even unsafe, with a number of elderly people already succumbing to the heat this summer. For more tips on how we can stay cool this summer, here's our Won Ji-yeon.
Safety Ministry figures show intense conditions brought on by heat waves have claimed a total of 547 lives in Korea from 1991 to 2013. And this summer, with hundreds of patients reportedly suffering dehydration, seizure, collapse, and swelling from the hot weather, health authorities have recommended the following guidelines to protect your health. First and foremost, the Health Ministry is advising people to stay out of the sun from the peak hours of heat from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., and especially on days when heat wave warnings have been issued. But if you have to be outdoors, make sure to drink plenty of water even if you're not thirsty, and take regular breaks in between periods of physical activity. Ideally, a cool spot with shade or place with air conditioning is the way to go. And wearing light, loose clothing can also help keep the body temperature down. Experts advise extra precaution for children and the elderly, as well as those who work outside. In addition to these guidelines, make sure to always stay informed by listening to the local news for weather alerts and call 119 for any emergencies. Won Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a great day, and thank you as always for watching, and we do hope to see you at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.